My name is Tladi, and my surname is Tladi. When I say I'm Tladi, people mistake it for a name. So I decided to pause between a name and a surname. Thank you very much for being in attendance. The last time we were here was on Sunday, and we had only 2 Springboks in the sky. We meet today, the situation has changed. We have more than 10 Springboks in the sky. We'll come back to that. Thank you very much for being in attendance and for honoring our invitation for you to come and spend some time at this media briefing. I am not going to waste time. I am going to start off by introducing members of the panel on my left-hand side here, led by the acting chairperson of the board of directors, Ms. Thandeka Mgoduso, who is seated second from the extreme left. Madam Chair, thank you for being with us and leading the team. Next to the acting chairperson, on her immediate right is the acting SAA CEO, Ms. Zux Ramasia. We also have amongst our mates, and I'm sorry if this is confusing, I just want to check if all of us are concentrating and are taking follow of what I'm saying. There's a gentleman who's seated the second from my immediate left. He is Mr. Dion Fredericks. He is our interim Chief Financial Officer. The first 3 that I mentioned and started off with them because they are members of the board of directors. The CEO and the CFO are members of the board. And the chairperson of the board, it is clear that she's the chairperson of the board of directors. Let me come to my immediate left. We have Mr. Martin Kemp, who is our acting executive for human resources. Next to Mr. Fredericks, the third gentleman from Martin Kemp, we have Captain Mpho Mamashela. He is the acting chief pilot and the fleet pilot for the wide-body fleet. And last but not least, it has nothing to do with nationality. You happen to be the last one. We have our chief commercial officer, who is Mr. Philip Sanders. I hope I got the surname right. If I did not, he also does something to my name. All the same, we have squared up. Ladies and gentlemen, without any waste of time, I am now going to invite the acting chairperson of the board of directors, Ms. Thandeka Mgoduso, to formally and officially welcome you and to make a few remarks before the program gets underway. Madam Chair.
Thanks, Tladi. Yes, ma'am. Again, let me start by welcoming everyone here. And your continued interest and keeping us honest is appreciated. We meet under these difficult circumstances where we are going through industrial action, which we are working very hard to resolve. I've just come from Pretoria, from DPE, where we met with the National Union, NUMSA and SACA, and the minister and the ministry. Again, an attempt to look at ways of resolving the current impasse. This afternoon, we'll again be meeting with the unions, NUMSA and SACA, to try and find common ground in terms of what is on the table. We acknowledge that we have been given a huge responsibility by South Africa to take care, turn the airline around to profitability, and to ensure that it succeeds in the global space. We utilize a lot of the taxpayers' money and obviously our customers. We take that responsibility very seriously. And it is because of the awareness of that responsibility that we are trying everything that we can to resolve the current impasse. And we have the executive support, management support, and the shareholder support in trying to do what we have to do. We have tough choices to make, and with that, I'm going to hand over to Zooks to walk us into the press conference. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Madam Acting Chair, and thanks to members of the media who are present here today. Today, I'm just only here to announce one thing and one thing, that SAA is on the road of operational recovery. SAA would like to reconfirm that we have resumed our operations, particularly on the international, because we have all our international flights have started operating. And we are also in fact, as from today, we've started with a limited number of our regional flights. It is important to note that the domestic service is not being ignored, but is being operated by our subsidiary, Mango Airlines. Therefore, South African Airways is on the road of operational recovery as we speak. We would like to thank all our employees who are back at work, including our flight attendants, the ground crew, and all employees at large, for being prepared to continue to carry out the flag high around the world to say SAA is on business. We applaud all the committed employees for their understanding that the airline cannot afford their desired salary increment as a result of the financial situation that we find ourselves in. Therefore, we applaud them to making that decision that we are going to be the part of the solutioning into recovery of the airline. Just to remind you a little bit of the reason for the impasse, the National Union Metal Workers of South Africa, which I will refer henceforth as NUMSA, as well as the South African Airways Cabin Crew Association, which I will refer henceforth as SACA, are demanding a wage increase of 8%, and the company is only able or is in a position to only give a pay rise of 5.9%, only starting from March 2020. That's what we can afford as is now. And we have communicated that very well to all the union. We therefore call on all the remainder of our employees who are still on strike to return to work for the sake of our customers who are paying our salaries, and most importantly, to secure the future of South African Airways and the country's economy to continue working. Today, SAA is resuming flights to the 6th destination on the African continent. Namely, we are starting to go to Accra, to go to Lagos, Lusaka, Maputo, Windhoek, and Harare. Those are the flights that we are operating. Those are the regional flights as from today. Would like to confirm as well to our customers traveling on this destination that they are being rebooked on these reinstated flights, and we're in a process of notifying them all accordingly. So if you haven't been notified, don't despair. We will try to get ready and make you aware that you are being reinstated on the flight. We're also pleased that we have been able to offer our customers on the domestic alternative flights since from Sunday. whilst we did not operate, but we gave them alternative means of travel. In the meantime, we thank our subsidiary and partner airlines, Mango, as well as Airlink and SAA Express for doing a sterling job in accommodating our customers. Once again, we regret the inconvenience that has been caused to our loyal customers. SAA would continue to work hard to focus on gradually ramping up our regional as well as our domestic flights, because remember, our international we are full, they're ongoing, we're operating. So what we are reiterating is that we're going to ramp up the domestic as well as the regional flights. It is in this regard that all the announcements will be made as we ramp up. We'll keep on making a new announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, as previously mentioned, our operations are fully compliant and would appreciate the confirmation made earlier today by the Civil Aviation Authority, which is our regulator, that they are sure that about us that we are operating safe operation. Because when we started, in fact, when we grounded the operation, we reported to the Civil Aviation. When we started or when we commenced our operations, we reported to them, because we only started with the international. Why we did that, we wanted to be certain that we've got all the required crew that are qualified to be able to operate. That's what we've done. We're operating very responsible because safety is paramount. It's important that our passengers all the time, when we crew up our aircraft, when we get technical people looking after aircraft, everybody is qualified and competent to do so. The statements made by SACA on the safety of SAA is very regrettable and it's untruthful. We're therefore taking appropriate legal action to address them as such. It is known worldwide that our flight deck crew, cabin crew, and technicians are highly qualified. For example, for all the international flights which operated on Sunday, the cabin crew that operated on all those international flights have an average of 16 years being in the airline. And therefore, what I would also like to mention is that year after year, you always, as cabin crew, you always have to be checked by the Civil Aviation Authority if you are still competent to do your flight. So these people for the past 16 years have been given a stamp of good health by the Civil Aviation Authority. Those were the cabin crew on board. And the flight deck crew have got at least 20 years experience, and Captain Mamashela will elaborate on everything about our crew qualification. But it is one thing that I need to emphasize, that all of them, they're qualified and competent to do the flights. Also, we'd like to mention that a growing number of our employees are not supporting the strike. More workers are coming back to work, and this is evidenced by the increasing number of flights that we're operating. The fact that we're laying more flights to the destinations that I've already mentioned is because of the return of those who were in the industrial action. SAA would like to strongly condemn the intimidation of employees who have decided to report for work. Let's be clear about this. Describing some of our employees as traitors and threatening that we know where you are will not be tolerated by South African Airways. We'll do everything in our power to protect our employees. While striking remains to be a personal choice, no one should be pressured by anyone or including any union member to participate in any strike. The airline will therefore not tolerate those seeking to intimidate those wishing to report for duty. It is important to note that NUMSA and SACA trade unions have added additional demands which are not part of the initial dispute. There have also been incidents of intimidation and non-compliance to the picketing rules. The company has therefore decided to approach the Labour Court on an urgent basis to interdict those demands which were not part of the initial dispute, because they are not procedural and they're not compliant to the picketing rules. We'd also like to make our staff aware that the strike comes at a personal cost to them as employees. We have invoked a no work and no pay principle. There will be salary loss for the striking employees who embark on this action for 7 days. It will take them around 4 months to recover from the financial loss if they keep on going on an industrial action. But what is important is that we are open to communicate. We want to talk. We want this impasse to finish. And as Chair has referred to it, that they have met at the DPE this morning, and this afternoon we're still going to meet with them and continue, because the most important thing for all of us is that we must come back in the negotiating table and be able to resume the full schedule. The cost of the company in the industrial consists of many things, including the claims from customers, the denied boarding compensation, the loss of average daily revenue, the loss of future sales tickets, the aircrafts themselves that are being parked, because aircrafts make money when they are airborne than when they are parked. And the cargo revenue, we have losses there. The income of losses to those pilots, cabin crew, ground staff, and everybody who's not on strike, they are losing revenue because of us not operating a full schedule. We have contacted the CCMA, like I've mentioned on Sunday, to mediate in the salary increment impasse that is ongoing. Both parties have requested to return for mediation with ideas of how to deal with this impasse and broker this and make peace so that we can operate fully our schedule. Our efforts are therefore focused on finding solutions that accommodate employees' demand, safeguard the business, and return our operations to normal, while exploring every possible avenue to make sure that we return back to normal. We remain committed as South African Airways in ending the strike and get all our employees back to normal. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to reaffirm that we are open for business and also to continue negotiating with our employees, because we want to return this business to normality for everybody, for the economy of the country, and for all our employees as well. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I have a team here of experts in remaining in different fields. We will take questions as a team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CA. Ladies and gentlemen, the message, if it was one, the messages, if there were more than one, have been delivered. In case you seek clarity on any aspect of the message that has been delivered here today, now it is an opportunity for you to ask those questions. Indeed, indeed. Those who know the drill, those who know the military drill have done so already. We are going to take a first round of questions. I am going to ask that we become as succinct as possible. Ask no more than 3 questions for this first round, please. Shall we start from the front? Not that you are the frontline states. Shall we start here? Noted? Noted. 3, 4, and 5. In that order, please. Age is catching up. I may not remember who's number 1. Please remember your numbers in the order that I have noted you. Proceed, madam.
I just wanted clarity on, what was the outcome of the meeting with the unions, with the minister this morning. You said that you're going back to have the meeting. Why is that? Is that because there was a deadlock, there was no agreement, and what happens from now on?
That's all? Thank you. We'll have the incentive for it. Next one.
From NCA. I just want to find out, I'm not sure if you can indicate at this stage, but how many passengers have been impacted because of this strike? Do you have an estimate? I know more passengers could be affected in terms of the domestic, but if you can give us a number. Also, how much has the strike cost the airline? Because you guys indicated that it's costing the airline 52 million a day. But now that you have some flights back in the air, is it still 52 million or is it less? And in terms of the legal aspect, you guys were saying that you're going to go after the unions because of the remarks they made about the flights not being safe because of unqualified and inexperienced technicians and engineers. Are you guys going to pursue that legal aspect, or what's the status on that?
Thank you. My number 4. Yes, sir.
Kieran Ryan, MoneyWeb.
MoneyWeb.
That question I was going to ask about the loss of revenue, but maybe if you can unpack that a little bit more, because the acting chief executive did go into the various breakdown of these categories, like claims from customers, the aircraft being parked, the loss of revenue, and also the loss of revenue to staff and cabin crew. That's my question. Oh, sorry, and how many staff are still not at work?
Yeah.
Thank you. My brother will be next.
From News from Africa. I might have missed this, but you mentioned that there are additional demands that the unions have made. Do you mind confirming what they are?
Thank you.
Bob Atulwane, Eyewitness News. I just want to find out, monetary I understand you're losing money, but reputationally, how long can you continue with this? Because SAA is the bad apple of this SOEs the country has. So how long can your reputation sustain that? Number 2, when we talk about saying you want to go after unions for saying something like this and also legal action on this, isn't that a way of further antagonizing them, because they are very intent on carrying on the strike no matter what? And the third point is a strategy of frustrating them so that they come back to work because there's no work, no pay, because at the same time, you are suffering too. So is it trying to see who bites down or who falls first, the strategy that we have here? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have about 9 questions so far. May I ask my colleagues to also distribute? I don't know if the statement has been shared with you. If not, we will share the statement with you. That will serve as a good reference point and also for accuracy. It is important that we report accurately. May I seek direction insofar as the response to these questions are concerned?
I'm willing to start.
You are willing to start. Do you want to come here? Members of the panel who are going to respond to questions, if they could come and please address the audience from here, please, the podium.
Yes, hello, Philip Saunders, Chief Commercial Officer. I think it's right that I should start with the answers because you asked about how many people have been impacted by the strike action to date. We estimate that around about 11,000 passengers have been booked for flights with SAA on each day of the dispute to date. But of course, one of the things which must be stressed is how hard the airline has worked to minimize that disruption. Let's be clear, the unions were aiming to shut down this airline. That's the reason why we took the decision 36 hours in advance to cancel flights, so that our dedicated commercial staff around the world could rebook customers on other airlines, offer the opportunity of a refund, or to rebook on SAA services sometime up until the end of October next year. And that strategy has worked. Obviously, as CCO, it's my responsibility to apologise to all customers who've been inconvenienced. At the same time, if you have a look at the airport, and I know many of you have reported from the airport, we've perhaps had, in the first 2 days, 400-500 people in the airport each day out of the 11,000. It gives you an indication of how we've managed to deal with the issues before people have actually reached the airport. And if you look at our international stations, on the first 2 nights of the strike, before we restarted the international services, there were as few as 2 or 3 passengers who turned up in outstations such as London, Frankfurt, Munich, and New York. So we've done our best to minimize the disruption. And the other element, very clearly planned on our part, is this incremental ramping up of our services. So the first 2 days, there were no services, and people had to be rebooked on other airlines. On day 3 and 4, working with our partner airlines and sister airlines such as Mango, SA Express, and Airlink, we were able to reintroduce domestic service. And then the next stage was effectively the international services. And now we've announced regional services. In fact, I have to apologise to my boss, the CEO, because the situation is developing so fast that my team and the operations team are working to reintroduce flights as quickly as they can. And I can tell you now 2 pieces of news. First of all, on Thursday, the 21st of November, we will also operate flights to Victoria Falls. And for the first time, we will also introduce 2 return flights on a domestic route. That's Johannesburg to Cape Town, critical core route for this airline. And also 1 return flight between Johannesburg and Durban. So you can see that the airline is following up on its commitment to its customers to reintroduce service on this incremental basis. And we've kept to our promises. I think it's much better to under-promise and over-deliver. And that's what we've done to date. We will always put our customers first. So whilst we regret the disruption, we hope we have served them well, which also answers the question about reputational damage to some extent, I think. Because 65% of our revenue comes from our outstations. That's why we put such an emphasis on our international services and have succeeded to some extent. I think I would conclude on this point by saying SAA has acted responsibly at every single step of this situation in the interests of our company, our country, our customers, and actually all of our staff. My request as Commercial Director would be that the unions show the same sense of responsibility and with the necessary urgency. And I would like to answer one other question, if I may, which is about further antagonizing unions relating to false claims made about the airline. I think you have to understand, in my case, I've worked in this industry for 30 years. The most precious thing to anybody in this industry, whether a pilot, cabin crew, or any employee of the company, is our commitment to safety. It simply isn't acceptable to tell untruthful statements about this. And it's not just SAA that says this. You can see it in a statement just issued, I think, an hour ago by one of the other unions, NTM. So I'm sorry, when somebody libels you or slanders you and attacks the most important value of this airline, the airline that flies the South African flag around the world, it's simply not acceptable, and action to redress the situation needs to be taken. I hope you'll understand that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to answer the questions. I'm Dion Fredericks, the Chief Financial Officer. I think it's important to start at the beginning. And the beginning is critical for us as our customers, as Philip has already indicated. And that was our first focus. The second point I would like to make is the company have financial challenges. All of you know it. And based on this, we have taken all the information that's available and made a decision considering our customers, but also considering our financial situation. I think the first point to make is that we've indicated to the union we're prepared to give them an increase of 5.9%. However, we don't have the financial muscle at this stage. We've indicated that the 2 billion working capital that's currently available needs to be used to make sure that we keep our aircraft in the air, but also to make sure that we comply in all ways. We have then also responded to indicate that we will go out and procure funds so that we can pay the increases as we've indicated at this stage in March. Now let's get to the 50 million. It's important ultimately when you do a calculation to indicate what is the worst case situation. The 50 million is the average that we use in terms of stats that we have available, and it indicates to us if, as the union has indicated, they close the airline completely down, it will cost us 50 million. That has significantly reduced now, as you can see, and it will continue to reduce. You must remember that the union requested an 8% increase. If we allow an 8%, we can't, firstly we said, we can't afford 5.9. Our first offer as the responsible CFO was 0%. We then realized, but it would be very difficult, and we increased it to 5.9%, indicated that we can't at this stage indicate when we can pay them. We then did additional efforts to make sure, and we're speaking to lenders. Lenders has indicated they're comfortable to provide us at this stage the 2 billion for the working capital, and we in further discussions for additional funding ultimately. As a result of that, we could not make a commitment that we can't honor because we haven't finalized it. Now we have gone as far as saying we will pay you your 6 months at the end of March and the balance in April. As a result of that, if we continue to pay 8%, it increases, as you would understand, your base immediately with another 2.1%. We've taken that 2.1% with the same 8% escalation on a year-to-year basis. It will cost this company an additional 240 million over the next 3 years. And as you would appreciate, the most critical part of the turnaround of the company will be in the next 2 years. We've indicated to the unions that currently we can't afford it, but if we want to structure something in the later years, we're very open to do that. And I hope that clarifies the matter of the cost. Thanks very much.
There was a question regarding the outcome of the meeting with the minister this morning, whether it ended in a stalemate because we're meeting them again. The atmosphere was problem solving. Both parties came together to look at possibilities. And you've got to acknowledge the fact that the players who will resolve this are the executive, are SAA and the unions, not the minister. So that is why the unions are coming back to continue the conversations within the organization. So there was no impasse. Instead, there were possibilities that were bandied, which are going to be explored further, a framework for a whole host of things. You'll appreciate the fact that unions are part of the staff at SAA. They have ideas as well. So they are presenting those. If those are outside the LTTS, then we'll entertain them and look and weigh the pros and the cons. Yeah, so it was a cordial interaction and it was a constructive engagement, and we shall continue that. What was important was that NUMSA and SACA said they are willing to come and continue conversations within SAA. So we'll be meeting them this afternoon. Thank you.
Good afternoon. If I may answer the question relating to the additional demand. So the dispute is on wages that was referred to the CCMA. And the CCMA conciliated on the wage matter. So 3 unions in SAA deadlocked on that wage issue, and 2 of the unions are on strike, or the coalition of 2 unions are on strike. So what happened during the process, as notices were given to us in terms of the strike, additional demands were added, and these two demands can be summarized as follows. The one relates to the restructuring of the organization, which is a separate process in law, that the law specifically prescribes what process you need to follow. And the second demand is insourcing of a variety of services that's rendered to the whole of the industry. So that's the summary of the additional demands that were raised. I think you must appreciate, that there is processes that needs to be followed in terms of dealing with demands from trade unions when they're raised, and it can't be raised, at the spur of the moment. You have to follow a process and then obtain, a legal process and obtain a non-resolution certificate on those issues before you can raise them. So yes, I think that in summary addresses the issue of the additional demands. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Ladies and gentlemen, any more questions? I think there were hands at the back before I come to the captain. Let me do it this way. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, 5 right at the back. In that order, please.
Nomsana Silva from BBC News. You keep saying that you are under severe financial strain, and then you say that you are open for business. When was the last time you turned a profit? How long can you carry on like this? Is it not time to play strong?
Thank you. Next question.
Naledi Mashishi, Reuters News. I'd just like to find out what has been the feedback you've been getting from the ministers, Boweni and Godan. Are they still saying the plan is to stabilize the airline and search for a strategic equity partner? Or is the government now willing to consider allowing SAA to collapse to preserve scarce fiscal resources? And then I have another question, which is, are you insured for the strike? Am I allowed to ask the third?
The last one, yes, indeed.
Okay, last one. You spoke about the lenders, the money that you're getting from lenders. What kind of interest are the lenders charging?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Madam Minister from Newsroom Africa, I think this question will be answered by the chief pilot. You mentioned that there are a number of workers that are back at work. What is the morale like?
Thank you, Morale. Next, yes, sir.
Format Luan again from EWN. Mine is quick. One of the issues the unions had was the board itself. In the negotiations, is that a stumbling block? Is that why? Because they said that they don't want this board, it's corrupt, the procurement spend, the consultant they spend on, and they want it gone. So I just want to understand, is that a stumbling block for the two parties?
Thank you. Number 5.
We're limited to 3, so I'm a driver in from News 24. Earlier this month, there were reports that SAA needs to obtain 2 billion before November, which is November 20th. Could you confirm if this date is correct and money has been found? If so, who provided it? Also, what areas in SAA have been impacted most by the structure draft? And has the airline received a notification that pilots will be planning to go on trip?
Thank you. Madam, you are the last.
Mine is also very quick. Naledi from the SABC again. My question is about the striking employees. You had said something about if they've been striking over 7 days, then they will not be getting paid their salaries. Does that mean that it's, there is not a everyday, no pay, no work, no pay type of thing on a daily basis? Or will that only be considered after the 7 days?
Thank you. As the leadership prepares to respond, let me start with the acting chief pilot. Captain?
Thank you. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I think one of the things that created a huge stir for us was the fact that there was a word about the safety and of our operations. I was very happy to hear that none of you raised a question on that, which clearly shows that we have answered that. And it was affirmed by our Civil Aviation Authority that confirmed that our operations are safe and fully compliant. That is a very key element of our value proposition. I have mentioned it before that if one looked at our fleet, we have a very old fleet, and in comparisons to the likes of the Emirates, it is a bit outdated. But people come to fly with us still, and we do carry reasonable loads. And that is because that value proposition of safety and the fact that today there's no questions further to that clearly shows that we are addressing that, and it is one of those things which we believe, sir, is one of the things that will help to preserve some of the reputational risk as a result of this. We're fully aware that people, when they're inconvenienced, they get upset. And sometimes you throw your toys out. But one of the things that we all know is that, when things are tough, it's about what people are prepared to do for you and be with you. And you've heard about what we are actually going through in support of our customers. which is why today we are proud to say, give you the numbers that you've just heard about the number of people who actually turned up to airports. Having 5, 10 people, when you move 11,000 people a day, that is a phenomenal thing. And most of those customers have appreciated the approach that we've taken, that we have continued to engage with them, and that we have not abandoned them. So that is one of the things that's going to help us with our reputational and control the reputational damage that we're experiencing. The morale. The morale of this airline, yes, has been challenged by the fact that we are not in a position that we would like to be. However, the faith and the belief in where this airline can be is clearly demonstrated with the presence of our labor force. In the last year, and even in this year, we've had every single top airline do a roadshow to South Africa to come and recruit pilots, paying them 3 times their salary on a tax-free basis, offering us to pay all of your child's education anywhere in the world. And a lot of our pilots, yes, that is look at Qatar Airlines, look at Emirates Airlines. And a lot of our people said, no, they're not going to do that because they believe in the future of this airline. And I'm proud to say that that promise is starting to be delivered. Some of you may be aware that we have embarked on trying to renew our fleet. And that is also a sign of commitment for us to do change in what we do and to create improvement in how we operate our business. We fly full aeroplanes, and therefore we clearly realize that it's not going to be from seats that are going to make the profit. We have to improve on the way we do things and other things that we will do. So the introduction of our new A350, to give you an example, is an aircraft that's going to be able to fly from here to New York in a shorter time and spend over 20,000 kilograms of fuel less than our current aircraft, which translates into over 140 million rands saving per year. Such initiatives and what we are demonstrating to our lenders are a sign of saying that South African Airways, you are actually doing something to improve on how you're doing business, and it gives some sort of confidence. The morale is also being supported by the fact that people have said, I'd rather come back to work and help this airline, because we realize that us going on strike and grounding it is not necessarily the right solution given this time that we are going through. So, yes, technically there are improvements. In terms of the employment, the employees, it's not where it should be, but one thing there is a light of hope, there is a belief. And I think the nice thing also is the fact that there is continued communication. And I think I'd like to also, at this point in time, to thank all of our crew, technical, cabin crew, pilots, for their demonstration of professionalism that they continue to demonstrate in every flight. And that is one thing that's keeping people coming back to us. The experience level was also questioned, and I did answer that yesterday, but there was a question on the actual numbers of hours in terms of experience after the allegations of us putting people with little experience in our cockpits. Just wanted to give you an indication that just on the flights that took place yesterday, that the lowest average flying experience in our cockpit was sitting at 13,226 hours. That, as was articulated earlier, is averaging between 17 and 20 years of experience in this airline. So we once again would like to reassure the traveling public that supports South African Airways that your safety is in good hands when you leave it in South African Airways. Thank you.
There were a lot of questions about the future of the airline from a financial perspective, and I'll leave those answers to the CFO, Dion. But I just want to, as the Chief Commercial Officer, explain why people should have faith in this airline and why it has a commercial future. I think the first reason is that we've been consequential in the last few days. People can see the quality of decisions made to protect our customers, the unbelievable dedication of our staff, and believe me, it's been inspirational for me in terms of looking after our customers. And even if we haven't been able to reach every single individual, when you consider we're talking about 11,000 people a day, that takes a massive effort. But much more than that, we are facing the opportunities of the future. Captain just mentioned A350s, bringing state-of-the-art aircraft into this airline to serve our most important destinations, to show a new commercial energy by reviewing our long-haul network, our regional flying, and coming up with solutions that are not just good for South Africa, but for the whole African continent. And until this horrible industrial action started, you will have noticed in the last few months a far more forward SAA in the market, on many of your media channels and in your newspapers, promoting new offers, new ideas. Yes, SAA has been in business since 1934. Perhaps we need to refresh a little. That we are doing, and we are also addressing the 5 pillars of the ALTTS, that's our long-term restructuring program. So I hope that although this is a test for SAA, that it also marks a turning point where we're able to look to the future and give the airline the position it deserves in global aviation. The skills are here, the desire is here, and the commercial energy is here. So let's make a great future for the Springbok and for South African Airways. The time is right.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The first question is, when last did we make a profit? I would like to place that in context. And let's be honest with each other. Why didn't the company make a profit for the last 5, 6 years? Firstly, state capture. We all know about it. Secondly, if you look in terms of the company, there isn't the right skills. There isn't the right leadership, and we've seen leadership. I'll tell you a story about leadership now. Thirdly, just processes. We can't have processes that doesn't enable us to react quickly. Where we have competitors that's in the private sector that can make on a day basis, they can make a decision and implement. We're not in a position. We're working with the shareholder to address that specifically. As a result of that, we've already implemented a board implementation committee. The board meets every week, so every week a decision can be made. We also have a joint implementation committee, which consists of management, the board, and officials from DPE, so that on a weekly basis, decisions can be made. So there's some progress in terms of that, and we would like to accelerate that so that we can operate like a normal, competitive, private company at the end of the day. On procurement, there's certain challenges. We agree. There's probably still specific challenges. Previously, we indicated to Parliament how many people were disciplined, how many were fired. Some of the cases have been given to the Hawks, as well as the SIU. There's 84 contracts that's under review that we have through the process of Advocate Macaulay now given over so that we can get a presidential proclamation. And then the detail will be unpacked. People's personal accounts will be open to see where they involve in state capture at the end of the day. Furthermore, systems, processes were completely broken. It's been broken over the last 6 years. It's not going to fix it in one day. And that's why a new long-term turnaround plan has been implemented with 5 pillars at the end of the day. Firstly, in terms of liquidity, the shareholder has supported us in terms of that, and we hope they will continue to do that. In terms of revenue stimulation, Philip has spoken about that. In terms of new routes, which is being addressed by the commercial, replacing our fleet, we're out on a wide body RFP. We accelerated that, and that's why you see the new 350s coming and being in place. Restructuring, transforming technical, and let me give you the example in technical. With the new CEO there, Adam Foss, they've taken a Mango aircraft for a C check. It usually takes 60 days and more. They've put a target for themselves of 35 days. They've completed it in 34 days. If we can duplicate that, suddenly it will change part of the airline. Then we said organizational design. We need to have the right people in the right positions. On the radio, I made a few examples and say, if you have a rugby team, let's sing that the Springbok, and we Springbok has won the World Cup. You can't have 20 people on the field. You can only have 15, and there must be 5 reserves. And that's where we need to get the right people in the right positions. The aviation operating environment has changed, so we also need to make sure that we have the right organizational structure. So hopefully with that, we believe if we can do all of that, and we need the support of our creditors, as well as our lenders, but also about the public. If you keep on saying negative things about SAA, it impacts our forward bookings. So you're actually not only damaging SAA, you're also damaging the South African economy. So please assist us as we're trying to turn the airline around. Then in terms of insurance, it's very difficult. We have insurance for damages, but you can't get insurance for loss of profits. And the reason for this is the insurance companies say, how do you provide us evidence how many customers has been impacted? And because you can't do, it's very difficult to get insurance for that. On procurement spend, I think I touched on that. We're looking at all the contracts. We said previously, we've taken in SAA all the middlemen out that got 10 or 20 or 30% and not adding any value. But there's further detailed deep dives. And are we fast enough? No, we're not. We need to accelerate that, and we need to get the right people to be able to assist us to do that. Then in terms of the financing, the 2 billion, the banks in principle has agreed. We're busy with negotiating with them. We're busy with the documentation. And as we've previously indicated, based on that, we will require a guarantee from government. So it is currently work in progress. Thank you. Okay. Apologies, I missed one on interest on loans, and unfortunately we can't disclose what we pay the banks. They're a consortium of banks. They are each, we have, although it's a consortium, we negotiate the agreements in total, but when it comes to interest, it's individual discussions, and they look at our credit rating, and they look at various factors, so it's difficult to share with you what the actual interest rates are at this stage. Thank you.
Sorry, Dion, you didn't speak about the equity partner.
The equity partner, and this from a perspective from the company, it is a shareholder matter. What we as a company want to do, and it's my view as well, you need to stabilize the child first. The sick, nobody will buy the sick child or will take the sick child. Somebody will come and say, okay, you write off all your loans and you pay me to take the sick child. And that's what we're trying to do. If we stabilize, then the shareholder has already indicated, and they're doing work around it, to look for an equity partner. And something like this is not something that happens immediately. It will probably take at least 2 years at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thanks, dear. There was a question about the pilots. Pilots have not given SAA any notice to strike. In fact, we had an interaction with SAPA yesterday, and there was a commitment to continue working as cordially as we've been doing. There is one pilot who is a SAPA member, and a lot more can be brought in as and when there are such discussions. And they are committed to ensuring that we work together to turn this organization around. There was also a question about no work, no pay. Martin, if I can handle this one quickly. It's not only after 7 days that it kicks in. As long as you are not at work, no work, no pay. That was sent out to everybody at the start of the strike, that here are the principles that are governing the strike. It's a no work, no pay. Thanks. And there was a question about the board itself and so on. Maybe I'm conflicted on this. Maybe I shouldn't be the one responding to it, but I will. Yes, allegations have been made, all sorts of allegations. This board doesn't know what it's doing and so on and so on. I've got all the confidence in the board that we have. That who are still around means the shareholder has all the confidence in us. And there has been no evidence to the effect that there is any corruption amongst any of the board members that are in the current board of SAA. So we're doing what best we can, working with the executive, trying to ensure that we move the organization forward. I think those were the, we have support and continued engagement with the shareholder, both the DPE and the Ministry of Finance. And as I said, even now I'm from the meeting with the DPE, and the statement is the same. There is no money. We can't look to the fiscus for anything. We've got to work and do what needs to be done as a business. Dion is trying his best in terms of trying to find the company bridging finance so that we can do what needs to be done. And that is why we have to add more impetus in terms of implementing the LTTS. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There are two questions. I don't know if I'm conflicted or I'm sandwiched. I have my employers and my principals on the one hand, and I have my partners on the other. So I do not want to compromise questions of professional integrity. In the first round, there's a question that was not answered. It was question number 6 on the number of staff who are not working. If we don't know, we don't know. If we have it, maybe we have it. The second one was question number 17 in the second round of questions. Let me qualify, second round of questions, which relates to which areas are impacted the most. Maybe there are, maybe there's none. Shall we get a comment to that, please? Before we take the last round. Can I see any appetite? 1, the gentleman at the back, and 2 here. Your question, whose question hasn't been answered? Nomsa. You asked a question about whether or not it is about time to close shop. I think 2 speakers spoke on that and took you through the journey of the strategy implementation. That indicated that we have a roadmap, we are committed to implementing our strategy, and there are examples, tangible for that matter, that indicate our commitment. And the strategy is not something that we are making up today. It is a document that has been approved by the shareholder, including at the highest level, at cabinet level. There has not been any indication to the contrary that notifies us or indicates any departure from that particular position. It remains the current position insofar as our roadmap is concerned. Please confirm, Madam Chair and the CEO.
Perhaps the question is also around how long we can sustain.
Madam Chair, if you want to come and...
Oh, sorry. Sorry. That's why I was asking. Perhaps the question is how long the strike can be sustained for. Is that what your question is pointing at? Dion, may I ask you to comment on that, please? Thanks.
In terms of how long the strike may be sustained, As indicated, we are in the process to get interim funding, the 2 billion that I referred to. When we get the 2 billion, we will be able to continue supporting the business, as we've indicated as well, seeing that the business is back online and we adding additional flights every day. The impact on SAA will become significantly lower ultimately.
Ladies and gentlemen, if there is any interest, let's take the last round of questions, please. And usually the last round of question is one man, one question, one woman, one question. If ENCA is interested in having separate engagement, they will register their request and interest, and then we will attend to it separately in that manner. Heidi, show of hands, please. Let me start at the back. The gentleman with a hat. My lady, you are next. Number 3. Number 4, any other?
One of my questions weren't answered.
Number 5, you will reinstate your question. As we reinstate the flights, you will reinstate your question for a comment. You'll be the last one, Heidi. In that manner, please. I know you and I have a good relationship.
Okay, my name is Pedro. I'm with Business Report. My question is, as we speak today, how much is SAA's debt? And also, how soon are you going to be able to tell your financials? Or which ones are going to take place? Because it's been, I believe, 2 years since you last taken financials. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
From Business Times. I'd just like to know how much the airline has incurred in refund costs, as well as costs related to rebooking, and how much have they incurred in parking penalties?
Thank you.
Bonga again. I don't know if the CEO is still coming on to my question of the first round, but I'll just rehash it in a different way. I was asking if it seems that there's two sides, SA and the unions. One of them is saying they're losing so many millions, others say it's no work, no pay. I was asking the strategy on both sides, who falls first on this strike? Who's going to fight first? Because work is depending on workers coming back to work, some of them, but also saying that your operations are trickling in. So I was asking, is that the strategy you're employing right now, as to see who is going to fight first, you or the unions?
Thank you. The next.
Sorry, I also have an unanswered question. How many staff
Unanswered question?
Unanswered.
Yes.
Unanswered.
Yes, unanswered.
Unanswered. How many staff back at work, please?
How many staff back at work?
Percentage of the staff who were on strike back at work.
Thank you. I think it was question number 6 based on my notes. Question number 6 reinstated. The next one, before Heidi comes in.
From Channels TV. I just wanted to find out from the strike action, industrial strike action, could we see jobs lost in terms of trying to recoup money that was lost, the revenue that was lost during the strike action? And also just touch on the issue of the restructuring process. We saw, we had from many unions that are striking with members saying that the restructuring process is a problem because there are jobs, at least 900 jobs, that are set to be shedded by this restructuring process. Just let us in on where that process is and if indeed this is the case that jobs are stand to be lost here.
Thank you. Madam Heidi.
My question that wasn't answered and a new question. With regards to the legal threats, are you, I don't know if that was answered because I didn't hear an answer. Are you guys going to...
Question number 4 it was.
Oh, I didn't hear the answer, sorry. And then just another one. You guys are meeting with the unions now this afternoon. The unions are saying they want 8%. You're saying you can't get 8%, you can only get 5.9. My question is, how much longer can this strike go on for? Because it's causing serious ripple effects here. Are you willing to renegotiate for 5.9? Are you in a position to renegotiate for 5.9? Yes, that's the question.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the last round of questions. I am going to request the panel to respond to the 7 questions asked. Some of these questions, they have sub-items. Do you want to start?
The question was in terms of the debt. The debt is 9.2. You would have seen in the, that's the current debt that we have, that in the medium-term budget that the shareholder indicated that it will be repaid over the next 3 years. The debt that we will incur now is 2 billion. Because of the difficult operating environment, as we've indicated, as well as the impact, unintended impact of the strike, we will have to procure additional debt for working capital going forward. Then there was a question on the financials. We need to firm up on the conclusion of the 2 billion and the additional debt so that we can satisfy the liquidity requirement of going concern. The moment we have done that, we will be able to publish the 2018 results, and then the AG will also come back to finalize the 2019 results. In terms of the refunds and the rebookings and penalties, it's difficult to determine at this stage. As you would appreciate, we've got various outstations, and as these costs come through, we will determine what the actual impact for those different categories currently are. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO. The balance of questions, Martin?
At this stage, a fifth of our employees are on strike. So we're just over 5,000 employees. In terms of the percentage returning to work, it's increased over a period of time, but since the strike commenced, I'm estimating that about 200 has returned to work since the strike started. So let me just look at the other questions that were asked, if you give me some time. Let me just have a look here. So there was a question on who goes first in terms of the negotiations, who gives in first. I think negotiations is not about finding a lose-lose situation. We need to find a situation where we both meet, all our minds get together. We get to a conclusion that's suitable for both of us. Yes, we're in a strike situation, and a strike situation comes down, to a power play environment, but that's not how we as SAA want to do things. We really want to resolve this for us and for the employees, so we jointly can take the company forward. Then there was questions surrounding job losses. Yes, I mean, if the financial situation of the company deteriorates, it will seriously impact the company, and hopefully today or tomorrow we can break this impasse and move forward. But it's something we're trying to avoid at all costs. When it comes to the question on the retrenchment exercise, I think the process has commenced by issuing of the notice that we've discussed in a previous conference that we had that was held. And actually today the first session with the CCMA took place. And as far as I know, Lawrence, it continues next week, eh? On Monday. Okay, so they concluded for today because we have this wage talks this afternoon. So the process is continuing on Monday. So, yes, the meeting this afternoon, I think I've answered that one. Then there was the issue of the legal processes that we follow. I think this one was answered, Chloe. I mean, the reason why we have to follow the legal process is because the safety remarks that were made against the airline. And obviously we can't also allow intimidation to continue. Yeah. Thank you. I think that's it.
I think, Bonga, I just need to mention it's been answered, but I just need to mention, we are not in the habit of fighting with our employees. So we would really want all our employees to come back to work. It is important to us. We need them all. So it is, I just need to re-emphasize that whatever that is happening, that's why we remain open to talk and have a conversation with them. Irrespective of them having gone earlier to meet the minister, this afternoon we're meeting with them. We meet until the wee hours of the morning because we want to get to that consensus. You know, you can disagree, but at the end of the day, we are hoping we'll find a common platform because it is important for all of us that we must come together and work. I think the CFO also mentioned the issue of, because of our financial situation, we started with zero because we know that you don't have money. But however, because we are a considerate employer, we know that these things need to be, when you negotiate, you need to find a common platform. That's why we went to 5.9. That you cannot afford. To an extent, that's why we said we'll only pay it next year in March, because you're talking about money that you don't have, but we're projecting the future. When we put that 5.9, we're projecting our sales, we're projecting how, with the new fleet that we are bringing these 4 aircrafts that are 2-engine, that I have less fuel and that have better operational costs, that we were going to get into a situation that we see some cash flow that will pay that. So it was all based on projection and on the fact that we want to have this relationship that is good with our employers, with our employees. Thank you.
Philip, if you could. Yes, you, Philip. Question number 22. I'll remind you, please come through.
Okay. Really being tested. What's question 22? I think that actually Dion answered this, but there's no harm sometimes in answering twice, right, Heidi? Just to make sure that we have answered. It was about rebooking costs and so on. Look, I think sorry? And penalties, okay. So when it comes to rebooking costs and penalties, quite frankly, the priority at the moment is to look after our customers. It's pretty complex in terms of, obviously, you're rebooking on other airlines, you've got penalties and various other things that you have to pay. That will calculate over the coming days. Frankly, right now, the priority is looking after people. I think there's one thing that we haven't said, though. Obviously, we're an airline, so you want to fly aircraft. There are these costs, but also you have to set off the costs that we haven't incurred, such as you will understand that usually fuel is the highest cost in an airline. When your aircraft are on the ground, you're not spending quite so much on fuel, evidently. So there are two sides to the equation. And the other important point to remember is this headline figure of 52 million keeps getting talked about every day. But the more and more services that we operate, then that cost comes down, evidently, as well. So that's another of the reasons why we're seeking to return our operations to normal. I know, but as this is apparently the last question, we like to make sure that we've answered our questions comprehensively. So I hope that everybody feels that that is the case. And if not, I'm sure we'll all make ourselves available afterwards, because we want to be an approachable management team, not just to the media, but to the people who work for this company, so that we are one team. Doesn't matter whether you're in a union, doesn't matter whether you're management, doesn't matter whether you're not in a union. We need to be one team to face the challenges of the future, win, and make South Africa proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Dion. Madam Chair.
Philip,
oh, Philip.
It's okay.
It's payback, Philip.
Payback, yeah.
Madam Chair, any remarks as we conclude?
I didn't have anything to say, but because you've invited me to come up here, the reality is even the 5.9% that we're talking about, we can't afford, as Zook said. There is no money in SAA and in the fiscus for SAA. So it's that sad state of affairs. Someone was asking, so what are you talking about with the unions? If you are not going to be moving in terms of the 5.9%. It's not only the money, but we all have to think outside the box to say what other solutions can we look at in terms of trying to move the needle forward. That's the engagement that we're having with the unions. Even yesterday with SAPA, we're trying to look at how we can think out of the box so that we can arrive at a place where the various interests are taken care of. That's the ethos of what we're trying to do. With that, thanks very much, everybody, for coming, and we remain very available and very accessible and when there are questions or when new issues arise as we go through this difficult period as SAA. And we thank you for your coverage of this process. Thanks very much. All the best.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's it. Thank you. Rich.